back with you on impact, and we continue to focus on the economy, but also to focus on the work of the multilaterals, the IDB and the World Bank in Jamaica. We've seen recently a major expansion in the path beneficiaries, and we've seen as well that some of them are doing extremely well, to the point where an award was given. Well, many awards were given recently for the beautiful results that some of the path beneficiaries have been receiving. I want to come back to you, Mr. Haque, from the World Bank. The minister in his presentation said for the period 07 December to March 2010, the loans approved by the IDB, that's you, Mr. Johnson, total 776 million US. The World Bank 406 million US, and there were grants and so forth. But what is crucial, he says this level of support is unprecedented. What is it about us? What is it about Jamaica over the last couple of years why you're pumping some more into the economy?
Because, again, I go back to the first statement I made, that our goal is to achieve a world free of poverty. Mm-hmm. Jamaica, I'm yet to meet any international development partner who doesn't think Jamaica has tremendous potential, but it hasn't lived up to its potential. Mm-hmm. Growth has been anemic. And one of the crippling, there are a variety of factors, but the most crippling one from our perspective is the size of the debt mm-hmm. and the continued high fiscal deficit. Mm-hmm. So once the government came and said, we want to do something to crack this nut, we're not quite sure what it is that we'll do, but we want to do it. Mm-hmm. And we need your support. Yes. So we aligned, we said, okay, we'll help you mm-hmm. with the analysis, with, as Jerry said, some of these things have been going for a long time, but we just enhanced after the government came with a very specific idea that this is something we want to do. Then, there's a lot of sympathy among all the donors that the government is keen, and I must congratulate the minister. He has been very successful in convincing our seniors that he is very serious mm-hmm. about addressing the debt issue. Then we programmed, we provided 100 million budgetary support in 2009, January 2009. Mm-hmm. And to understand what it means, in the previous 4 years, our total allocation for Jamaica was only, in the best case scenario, was 150 million. In January, we gave 100 million.
What was happening? I still don't understand. I remember in his campaign leading up to the election, Mr. Shaw, then opposition, promised that he would re-engage and promised that he would get very low interest rates. Mm-hmm. What led to the 4 years of 150 and in 1 year 100 million?
That's because the government started to initiate some of the reform measures which Jerry spoke about, like the fiscal responsibility framework. It just didn't happen in a couple of weeks. It took a process. Oh. But we saw a much more concerted effort, yes. And we provided a lot of the training mm-hmm. on some of these areas and sharing knowledge mm-hmm. of what's going on elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So sometimes, in fact, one of the ministers, again, I remember very clearly, when I first met him, he said, look, we know the World Bank doesn't lend much to us. We're not looking for a lot of money from you. Mm-hmm. But we'd like you to be engaged with the other donors to help us with some of our critical issues and share the knowledge that you have as a global bank. Mm-hmm. So, we initially made an investment, as Johnson said. Basically, that's for all the reforms that the government has already undertaken. Yes. We don't give our budgetary support based on a promise. It's yes. based on what has actually been achieved.
Oh, so it's almost retrospectively.
Exactly. Yes. So now then fast forward to the IMF program. Once the debt exchange was announced, yes. we were originally programmed to provide, Minister, as you will recall, only 100 million budgetary support, not investment, mm-hmm. but just budgetary support. Once the government announced its program, and it was one of the best kept secret in Jamaica, I don't know how, mm-hmm. There are a lot of things that you hear here and there, but this was one of the best kept secret. Once it was announced and we got a sense of what the government is actually planning to do, mm-hmm. our management then increased our 100 million budgetary support and I remember sending an email to the minister over the weekend, that if you go through with this program, we will increase our budgetary support by an additional 300 million.
Wow.
So that's in recognition, because when
Yes.
you undertake the reforms, there are costs involved.
Yes.
There are pains and so on. That those have to be supported. At the same time, because we have been involved with the PATH program, we've had a lot of technical level meeting with our IMF colleagues, because we work very closely to ensure that the poor are protected. In fact, there is space there to expand expenditures for the poor.
Yes.
And it's not just you know, as you hinted early on, it's not just a cash payment for the poor. The way it has been constructed is to develop the human capital. So parents receive a payment for an infant if that infant is taken for a health checkup on a regular basis. Parents receive a check if they take their children to school. And it's a little complicated, but essentially you are focusing on health, nutrition, and education. And globally what we have learned is that the best way to permanently address the issue of poverty is to ensure a healthy, educated person.
Yes. And in terms of education, Minister, I see the Education Ministry has about 14-point-something% of the budget, which is close to a 15% mark, which we desire as a country. Yes?
Yes.
Crime, a little far down, even though so many people have been killed since the start of the year. But what would you attribute that disparity in crime and education to, the allocation?
Well, the education budget has traditionally been take a larger share, and of course the very substantial increases to the teachers, in which we honor that agreement in terms of the private sector parity program, along with their 15%. Is what really has ballooned also the Ministry of Education budget, because the payment of the teachers is a large component of that. But I wanted, Emily, if you'll allow me just a couple of seconds to put the thing into perspective, because you mentioned the specificity of the IMF agreement. I want you to understand that what we've been doing with everyone, all of our partners, is to be very specific and to do things that require prior action before we even get the disbursements. So, for instance, they didn't disburse any funds for us because they then linked to the IMF agreement. We couldn't get a dime out of them until we had the IMF agreement as well, on top of our performance matrices. It's wrapped, however, fundamentally around three main principles. Fiscal consolidation, meaning we have to watch every penny, and we have to try to get value for money, and we have to run tighter government. That's why the Prime Minister has named a public sector transformation unit that is now looking forensically through the entire apparatus of government to make recommendations on how we are going to tighten up. It requires divestment of public sector entities, which we've started with. You know about here Jamaica, we're working on the Sugar Company of Jamaica, Clarendon Alumina Productions. And interestingly, within the context of those divestments, it is intended that they are going to be more productive in the long run. The divested entity will be more productive. CAP, for instance, that's being divested to a Chinese entity, is within the context of doubling the production at Jamalco, doubling it from 1.2 million metric tons to 2.7 million metric tons. That is the plan. The Sugar Company of Jamaica, it's the same thing. The plan is to significantly increase production, create more employment. Now, that's one. The second one is the debt management, which we've spoken about in terms of the debt exchange.
Before you go to the debt management, Minister, I want you to factor the public bodies into the quantitative target by the IMF, where they call for cumulative floor on overall balance of public bodies. What do they mean by that, and where are we?
Yes, that's significant in the sense that normally we have concerned ourselves with just the central government balances and the deficit of central government. What they are saying now is that the measurement is no longer just central government. We are measuring the entire administration of government, including all these selected public sector entities that are not in the big yellow book.
Yes.
They are a separate budget.
Right.
So the official budget, which has been announced, of $503 billion, that's not IMF's concern anymore. It is you combine it now with the $300 billion of the selected entities, so your overall public sector budget is really in the region of about 850 billion Jamaican dollars. And it is within that context that they are measuring the overall performance in terms of your final balances.
We're upon a break. When we come back, I want you to tell us how we're performing in light of the IMF criteria and to answer the specific questions put by the opposition spokesman on finance, Dr. Omar Davies. This is Impact. Back with you on Impact. It is the final segment and there are a lot of questions that we have to ask. I'm going to go straight to the IDB country representative, Mr. Gerard Johnson, and to ask again, when we got the IMF standby loan facility, and I suspect the JDX was gone through, your institution as well, you appear to have increased your loans to Jamaica. What is the spirit behind that, and what do you expect from that increased input?
Yeah, it was an increase. It is the largest loan program for a single year for any country in the history of the bank as a percentage of GDP. In other words, as a compared to the size of the economy. We've never done such a large loan program in any country. And you ask why? Because of the explanation that Badrul was giving you about the robust reform agenda. But something else happened. What the minister talked about, the tide went out. We are counter-cyclical.
Yes.
Now, a commercial bank that was concerned about making profits, if the tide goes out, they would tend to go out with it.
Yes.
The development banks do the opposite. The idea is to be there when you need us. And this first year of the program, you're entering a program that gets tighter. Now, the people who tell you that next